In 1996, I was diagnosed with a terminal condition and not expected to live for 6 months. After surgery and chemotherapy, I had a prospect of surviving for 2 years. In 1997, I was doing well and had wanted to visit Belize, so we made this trip. This was the first trip which included packing all the medical supplies that I needed for daily living. I am creating this log in 2025, so I am trying to remember back more than 28 years. I will include some current information from the internet. On the left in this slide is a copy of the map of Belize, and the red dot is St. Ignacio, where we would begin. We would go down in the southern part in Placentia and end our visit in Belize City. On the right is a map showing an excursion that we took beginning on the left side there in St. Ignacio and going down to the Singing Sands Inn down on the lower right side. We arrived in the city of San Ignacio. The most memorable thing about the hotel was the view out of the dining room. The photo on the left is morning fog, but it was beautiful over the jungle. In planning this trip, we had talked with a school teacher here in Central Point who had traveled to Belize and who recommended that we look up the mayor of San Ignacio, who might be able to give us a personal tour. We had his name, but have forgotten it. Soon after arriving, we walked downtown and began asking about this certain individual that might give us a private tour. Within about 2 hours, a taxi pulled up beside us, and the passenger identified himself as the individual that we were looking for. We arranged to meet him the next day to spend the day with him. He borrowed the taxi to take us on tour. One of the neat things about San Ignacio was that in the evenings, everyone came out to gather in the streets. The shops were open and the doors to individual homes were open. As we walked by, many of them had not much but a color TV. We saw a lot of poverty here. I think we saw a scene like this more than once, but here are some ladies doing the family laundry. Our tour began with a ferry ride across the river. I remember such ferries in Montana when I grew up there. First site visited was Zenentenich. The sign says that it is illegal to excavate Maya sites. We were told that excavation can only be done by natural Mayan descendants, and they very much took their time working with spoons, as it seemed. Zenantinich's name means sculpture of lady. This is a modern name as the ancient name is not known. The stone woman refers to the ghost of a woman claimed to inhabit the site beginning in 1892. Internet sources seem to identify this structure as El Castillo, and current photos indicate that it is still not fully excavated. The photo on the upper right was identified during our visit as a royal palace. Mayan natives are here working on these sites. As poor as the country is, I would think that if they would get busy and excavate more of the sites, they would increase tourism significantly. But they did not seem to be motivated to speed up. I think they do work under the supervision of some major universities. Here are a few more photos of Zenantinich in El Castillo. Here we passed by another local laundry, and on the right side, a place where we stopped for lunch. Our guide identified two wealthy families in Belize. One was the family that had the contract to install electrical telephone poles, and the other was the owner of this home who manufactured toilet paper. Structure is believed to have been the home of a Mayan royal. Throughout Belize, we saw what we thought were abandoned homes. Our guide explained that native Mayans were allowed to own and develop home sites if they could show some progress. Under this arrangement, the people could add a brick or a block or two whenever they could, and this would show progress, sometimes taking years. The next day, we were to travel by bus from San Ignacio to a remote bus terminal, and then we would be picked up by a vehicle from Ian's Jungle Camp. This would be about 37 miles. We were left at the bus terminal in San Ignacio with specific instructions on which bus to take. One bus was waiting, and another bus arrived and hustled us on board. As we drove away, we looked back and saw our guide waving, "No, no." We sped off. It turned out that the two buses were competing for passengers, and we played leapfrog, each bus stopping to pick up passengers along the way. By the time we arrived at the next terminal, the bus was full. I remember seeing a young woman coming out of a shack to meet the bus, and she was dressed in a sparkling white dress that must have been her treasure. This is our cabana at Ian's Jungle Camp. We were warned to keep the door locked as the monkey would come in and explore. Here at Ian's Jungle Camp, you see on the left side the shower area. Notice the buckets of water hanging up to be heated by the sun. And on the right, the restrooms were down the path. You might keep in mind these photos as I will be showing you the modern photos of Ian's Jungle Camp. In the evening, all the guests gathered for dinner. There were two young men at the table, each traveling alone, who had met on their travels and decided to make a few stops together. One of them, I believe, was from Australia or New Zealand and had been traveling around the world for many months. He occasionally would find some work to help finance his travels. A significant adventure provided by the jungle camp was the tube float into a cave system. There were ancient Mayan artifacts in the cave, and inside the cave we came upon a spot where a lunch had been prepared for us. a really nice experience. In planning this trip, I had found that the Singing Sands Inn was for sale, and I wanted to look at it as a possible investment. One day we sat down with the owner and found that he, like many owners, was from the UK or elsewhere, and when a guest paid by credit card or traveler's check, those funds were deposited directly in banks in the United States, and the income was not recorded on the books. The only recordings in the books were for income received in Belizean currency. Accordingly, it was impossible to establish the value of the property. At the time, electricity was about a mile away, and the property operated on a generator. The property was on a dirt road. Locals who worked at the inn walked to work early in the morning and had a long break during the day until they were again on duty in the evening. Here are a couple of views from the Singing Sands Inn. The inn also had a central cafe and a bar building, and we had a separate bungalow down a nicely landscaped path. There were many boarded up buildings in the area. I think some of them were restaurants that featured preparing your catch of the day. One day we went on a snorkeling adventure. We were told not to wear any jewelry because of the barracuda. I had not taken off my wedding ring, and I realized that a very large barracuda was watching me. It was a little intense for a few moments when I lost track of him. We left the Singing Sands Inn and we moved into a beach cottage in a small village and enjoyed exploring this little village on the beach. Our next stop was the Bethel home of Jehovah's Witnesses in Belize City. We arrived there by bus, and at the bus terminal, we had a rather frightening situation. There were many tax drivers meeting the bus, and we were obvious tourists. They were at the window of the bus before we could get out and into the building. I finally had to shout at them to get away. Inside the terminal, we called Bethel, and a brother told us to stay put and they would come to get us. In San Ignacio, we had inquired about the meetings at the local Kingdom Hall, and we were given directions. We found the building locked and found out later that there was a new Kingdom Hall, and we were told that when it was being built, the local people came to watch the construction. At Bethel, we were told that one of the problems was that local witnesses might be invited or have the opportunity go to the US or elsewhere for conventions and they would not return, thereby increasing the need for witnesses in Belize. Today in 2025, Ian Anderson's Jungle Camp is now Ian Anderson's Caves Branch Adventure Company and Jungle Lodge. Here is a quote from the website. Our original rustic Belize jungle lodge and river camp, think outhouses and bathing in a river, has evolved into a wide selection of top accommodations, including beautiful five-star luxury tree houses, complete with rooftop decks, hot tubs, and amazing views of the heavens at night and the serenity of the surrounding jungle. I contacted the inn by email and received a reply back welcoming me and Carnell to return again sometime. It was a beautiful place and now even more beautiful. Today, in 2025, the Singing Sands Inn is now the Azure Del Mar. Probably a good investment. As I noted at the beginning of this tour in 1997, I was not expected to live longer. Thankfully, since that time, Carnell and I have been able to travel to over 50 countries, enjoying so many wonderful places.